Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Profe Kyle interview. If you don't know who I am, you should. My name is Profe Kyle, your favorite English teacher. And of course, people are always asking for real gringo conversation. Profe, we got to hear gringos talking to each other, else I'm never going to get good at English. Well, there's tons of content online, but if you want to hear my voice, well, that's totally fine. I can give you more of my voice. And today I got a special guest. I have the owner, operator of My Latin Life, which for me personally has been my go-to source. Well, actually, we'll talk a little bit about it, but I think since 2013, I've been
Wow.
following. It's been a long time. Yeah. Just when I first started going Latin America, that was my go-to source for, okay, is this a good city? Is this a bad city? What can I expect going to My Latin Life? So I'm excited to have Vance here with me right now. Vance, how are you doing?
I'm doing well yourself.
I'm doing all right. Thank you very much. So Vance, thing about Vance and the thing about the website is that there's not really a face. It's very, very anonymous, which is totally fine. So I really don't know too much about Vance. So Vance, give us a quick background, whatever you're comfortable with. Who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to get into that. You know what's funny, Kyle, is I thought we were gonna do this in Spanish, or are we doing it bilingual
No,
or
no, no,
just
no. We'll
100%
do
in
we'll,
English?
we'll do it in English, of course. If you want to show off a little bit, just to like, yeah, I got the Spanish, yeah. But I don't know. We'll do it in English. For me, I prefer it in English for the students.
Sweet,
Yeah, mhm.
sweet. Happy to
Probably
speak to
easier for
the
you anyways,
students.
right, to do it in English.
No, cool, man.
Yeah.
Gracias por invitarme.
Yeah.
A bit of background. So My Latin Life is a travel blog that has been around since 2013 or
Okay. Okay.
2014,
Mhm.
as Kyle mentioned. There was a previous owner who was also Canadian, like myself. Yo soy canadiense, and the site got popular because of the city guides, where we created travel guides to basically every city in Latin America. They're still up there. You can go to mylatinlife.com and take a look at the city guides. And so it became a very good go-to resource for anyone traveling in Latin America, people who are thinking, oh, where should I go next? What's a cool city? Like, is this the type of place where I can spend a month or just a week? Is it good? Is it bad? And kind of get like a real opinionated perspective on a given city. That was a little bit more raw than what you might get on like tripadvisor.com. And so our content was just more relatable and a little bit more raw. If a city sucks, we'll say it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so yeah, I mean, I think the commonalities that the OG Vance and myself have in common. I've been running the site for about a year now, and I launched the podcast and so forth. So go check out the My Latin Life podcast,
Yeah.
which is in English, so you can use that to learn. But
Yeah.
I think that the commonality is that we were both Canadian, and we grew up in first of all, a climate where we're experiencing 6 months of winter,
Yeah.
and it's basically like hibernation, if you guys know that word, where you basically just spend all your time inside, waiting for spring, not really doing much, not seeing the sun, and it's really quite depressing. And yeah, it's just, it's depressing. You don't get vitamin D. And so for one thing, it just makes sense to go south to Latin America if you can, escape winter, escaparse de invierno,
Mhm.
and go live en un lugar con mejor clima. So that's kind of the first reason. And then obviously there's a lot more reasons around people being more warm and friendly, and the food,
Yeah.
and lower cost of living and so forth. So yeah.
Mhm. Well, I think there's a whole bunch of different directions we can go in. Let me see where I want to start. Well, and right now with the site, because you bought it from the OG Vans, actually, most of this I'm not gonna, describe or translate all the vocabulary. But one thing, if you're watching this and you're from Latin America, you might hear me or you might hear Vance talk about OG. So OG is a very gringo slang, which means original gangster, which comes originally from gangster rap. And now lots of gringo, especially gringo men our age, use it to just say uh, the the founder, the originator of something. So there was the original Vance. He was from British Columbia, and then this Vance is from Ontario, which is very popular with Latinos. So maybe let's start with that. You're from Ontario, and you're from Toronto, which is the biggest city in Canada. And from my experience, Vance, Latinos love Toronto. All the Latinos that want to move to Canada, they all want to go to Toronto. So I'm pretty sure a lot of them are completely confused. Why would this gringo who comes from the greatest city in Canada want to leave and come to my country? I think you kind of explained a little bit about the winter. Actually, I'm in Canada right now, and yes, Vance, outside it snowed about 4 inches. I don't have problems with snow, but as you said, winter it's about 6 months in Canada. It lasts a long time. But are there any other reasons, or can you give us a bit more detail? Why would you leave? Yeah, the best city in North America to live.
And it's true. There's a lot of Latinos in Toronto. Hay una gran comunidad de Latinos en Toronto. Creo que en parte porque like it's visa free for Mexicans to enter Canada, but not for the States. So it's actually much easier for Mexicans, at least, to go to Canada, and they can go and wink, wink, nod, nod. They can get cash jobs, and they could work in construction or in cleaning or maybe in a bar or something and just make cash under the table. And I think like even on a tourist visa, you can set up a bank account in Canada and stuff like that. So and there's a lot of opportunities to take school in Canada. So if you can afford a couple $1,000s, you can enroll in a school in Canada, and there's a very easy path, clear path to becoming a Canadian resident, como un residente permanente o temporal in Canada. And so it's quite open. Canadá es abierto a inmigración. And so it's I think it's something that I've noticed a lot more in recent years. Like I think that 5-10 years ago, there really was not a lot of Latinos in Canada, but in the past couple of years, I think there's been a huge surge in popularity, and the community has gotten a lot bigger.
Now, so you're from Toronto, but right now, well, let's go to, so where are you right now in Latin America? I think, because you've been all over the place. I think you were in Mexico. I don't know if you're still in Mexico or are you
I am in Toronto for Christmas.
Oh, really? You're for Christmas still? Okay, we're doing the same thing. Okay.
I just got back from Portugal. I spent a couple months in Portugal. And I'll be heading down to Mexico in a couple of weeks, inicio de enero.
So in total, how much time have you spent in Latin America?
Yo no digo exactamente cuánto tiempo llevo en América Latina, pero años, varios años.
Yeah, lots of years.
Okay.
So, and tell us, what are some of the countries, the main countries that you spent, I don't know, the most time in? I've been to many countries too, but I spent most of my time in Colombia, Mexico, and Argentina. So in your case, what are some of the countries that you spent a lot of time in?
Mexico, Panama, Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil, a little bit Colombia. Yeah, I'd say probably Mexico is number one, and maybe Paraguay is number two.
And when was the first time that you went to Latin America? What year?
I did go when I was in high school for a couple of trips, but it didn't really count.
Yeah. So one of those family vacations, or
there was one that was like the high school grad trip.
Oh, okay.
And then a couple things like that, but wasn't really getting into the local culture. But you know what happened was I read the 4-Hour Work Week. I read the book by Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Work Week, many years ago, and started putting together a meticulous plan to basically become a digital nomad, make money online, and travel the world. And so I built a skill set that allowed me to make money online. And my first destination was Mexico. It's funny, we originally wanted to go to Miami, me and a buddy, and kind of spend like a winter in Miami. And we were just looking at like Airbnbs and stuff, and it just was so goddamn expensive that we were like, you know what? Why don't we just go to Mexico?
Yeah.
And so it kind of happened a little bit by accident, and we
Uh-huh.
started looking at digital nomad hotspots in Mexico.
Yeah.
And yeah, the rest is history.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes things happen by accident. Now, in my case, I come from a small, well, I'm not even from a small town. Latinos will ask me where I'm from, and they'll always ask me Toronto. You're kind of lucky because I'm pretty sure when you say you're from Toronto, most Latinos are like, ooh. And in my case, I'm from the middle of nowhere in Alberta, so no Latinos know where I'm at. Uh, Now, in my case, like, there's no Latinos in my town where I went to high school, and I didn't meet my first
Mhm.
Latino until I went to school in Vancouver. Uh, so I was probably like 19 years old when I first started to get to know the Latino culture. So before you went to Mexico, how much did you know about, or there's Mexico or Latinos in general?
Basically nothing.
Yeah,
It was something that how do I put it? Because there's some parts of my personal story I can't give away, but
yeah,
um, I would say that I never had a particular affinity for Latin American culture until
hmm,
I went
yeah,
as an adult.
hmm,
And I remember just between going to the nightclub for the first time and swimming in the Caribbean
hmm,
and eating at the tacos places and ordering a fresh juice
yeah,
from like a little stand on the corner. And between those first couple and the community I met and people just being really cool and inclusive.
yeah,
So just after the first week I was there, I just knew that I had stumbled on something special,
hmm.
and uh, yeah, I rapidly gained an interest.
Yeah. So in a way, were you kind of surprised how attracted you were to the region? Because it seems like you just kind of went in there with open mind, just to hell with it. I'm gonna go to Mexico. Actually, yeah, Mexico is the reason that I know Spanish and I started to get into Latino culture. I tried real Mexican tacos for the first time, which weren't the crappy Tex-Mex tacos that we all eat in Canada. And then yeah, I had like agua de horchata, agua de Jamaica for the first time, and I
Yep.
like, oh my goodness, this is so incredible. I gotta get to know Mexico some more. Similar thing happened to you where you were so surprised by the Mexican culture that you decided that you had to learn more.
Yeah, for sure. And there is a piece where when I was in university, there were some exchange students from the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico and a couple spots, and they would always chill like in front of the library, and
Okay.
you'd always just see this like group of Latinos like speaking Spanish in front of the library
Hmm.
or like in the lobby of the library,
Yeah.
and it was like it was the hottest girls in the university. It was like these
Yeah.
couple of like Dominican exchange students, and I was just like,
Yeah.
holy shit! Like
Yeah.
it was just like leagues above.
Yeah.
Um, and so that definitely made an impression in my mind. But
Uh,
to be fair, I didn't really act on it
yeah.
immediately. Um, but then just yeah, getting into Mexico, I mean, I definitely knew I made the right decision, basically across every single metric,
Hmm.
whether it be climate, food, cost of living, dating, trying to think what else, like lifestyle, sunlight. I mean, just
Yeah.
across every single walkability, across every single metric,
Hmm.
um, my lifestyle and my general life setup and my general healthiness improved.
Yeah. Actually, my story is a little bit similar where, yeah, I was in university and I had a Mexican roommate. So I was already getting to know the Latino culture, but I didn't really know a lot. I knew a little bit about Mexicans, and my roommate was a bit of a Don Juan Mexicano. And so, every week, every 2 weeks, he'd have a new girl come over. And I remember he brought home this Colombian from, yeah, she's from Bogota. And yeah, just the most incredible curves I had ever seen, the most unique look I'd ever seen, just super friendly, open. And I think a little bit like you with the Dominican girls, you just kind of eyes wide open and think, oh yeah, these girls are leagues ahead of the girls that we have in Canada. And yeah, that definitely inspired me a little bit more to, maybe Latin America could be a cool place. Now, Mexico was the first place you went to. Did you go to Mexico City, or was it a different city that you went to?
No, I went to Playa del Carmen first.
Playa del Carmen. Yeah, well, lots of gringos. I've never been there, but lots of gringos say it's a little bit overrun. Do you still like Playa del Carmen? And
Well,
was it good back then?
this was years ago, right?
Yeah,
So it was significantly uh less discovered
yeah,
back then. And what typically would happen is I would go to the bar with maybe like my one Canadian buddy, and
yeah,
we'd be the only gringos in the bar,
yeah,
which
yeah,
would not that would not happen right now in
yeah, yeah,
2022,
yeah,
23.
yeah,
But back then, years ago, we'd be like, dude, this is nuts that we have this place to ourselves. It's
yeah.
insane.
Hmm. Yeah, lots of people are attracted to the nomad lifestyle. Well, maybe we can explain that, because I think for a lot of Latinos, they don't really understand why they're gringos going to Latin America. Uh, how would what? Yeah, in your own words, and your site focus on this a lot. What is the nomad lifestyle, and why are so many gringos choosing to lead this digital nomad lifestyle from your own perspective?
Yeah, I think we all have limiting beliefs, and you can't break every limiting belief at once, and it's something that is a bit of a gradual process, and a lot of it is seeing is believing as well.
Mhm.
It's very difficult. Like, you can hear that it's possible to make money online, but it doesn't really concretize in your head until you really see people doing it, that you meet them in person, or that you really just get some solid anecdotal information, or that you really sort of like see it happening, and see how people live the lifestyle. Um, like I could take, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts that could take this in different directions, but
Yeah.
I think North Americans and Latin Americans have slightly different limiting beliefs
Hmm.
around, say, remote work or the digital nomad lifestyle, or just like ideas around work in general.
Hmm.
Even in Latin America, like, say, Mexicans have a different concept of work than maybe an Argentinian would have,
Yeah, yeah,
or Brazilian, in terms of the work culture in these countries.
yeah,
But I think a lot of it is around um, basically like putting yourself in a position of power
yeah.
in the relationship, where it's very common if, say, you only have one job, you basically just have to listen to everything that your boss says, right? Es
Hmm.
ellos que mandan.
Hmm.
But if maybe you have two jobs, or you make money online from different sources,
Yeah.
or you have enough passive income to
Hmm.
sustain yourself, and the job is more something that you do to self-actualize and not to survive, right? You're in a different negotiating position, because you can do what you want, because it's not as survival oriented. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, and I think every gringo is different, but I think a big thing for a lot of gringos, I think that something that kind of defines, especially for people from the United States, Canadians were a little bit more herd mentality. Obviously, not you, not myself, but a big thing for us is just freedom, just to have that freedom to kind of do what you want and not have to constantly follow orders. Is that the main reason for you why you chose
Yeah, I
this
think
lifestyle?
freedom was definitely a really big part of it. Um, I think I always wanted to see the world,
Yeah,
but I didn't want to be a broke backpacker. I didn't want to
yeah,
be
yeah.
the type of guy that I set out with 10 grand and come back with zero
Hmm.
and have
Yeah.
to start again type of thing. I didn't want to do it that way. I wanted to um, basically have, my bank account going up every month still,
Hmm.
even while I was traveling. I wanted to travel and make money at the same time.
Hmm.
Um, and so, the only way to do that is with remote work, or basically making money online while you travel.
Hmm.
And I think it's really interesting. I think what happens typically, or has historically happened in the past couple of decades, is a lot of these trends start in the United States,
Yeah.
whether it be remote work or digital nomadism or veganism or any number of things,
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
number of things, right? I'm not a
Yeah.
vegan, but I'm just saying, or like Silicon Valley, like startup
Yeah.
culture, right? So like all this stuff sort of like started in the US.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of like the leaders, the thought leaders around like new concepts and ways of doing things. And then these ideas proliferate to the rest of the world a little bit slower.
Yeah.
And so it takes people like it takes people to basically translate our concepts into Spanish,
Yeah.
and that way, the Latinos will sort of like learn about the cutting edge concepts, but they're just a little bit behind. And
Yeah.
so, Profe Kyle, like I guess that kind of speaks to the benefit of learning English for
Yeah.
the students here. Is if you learn English, you can be much closer to the cutting edge of trends and big societal shifts, because let's say even the internet 20 years ago, and obviously it's still disrupting now, it's all in English. Like the code is in English, the meetings are in English, like everything about the internet was like done in English. And if you didn't speak English, you couldn't really be part of that revolution, and you wouldn't be in the driver's seat. You'd be basically someone who the internet was happening to
Yeah.
or displacing, or you'd basically be in a reaction frame instead of like a more proactive frame, or like having the ability to make a contribution. So when you learn English, you're able to be closer to the trends and closer to making a contribution, and just there's less of like an information barrier.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Actually, it's interesting that you said that, because right now I'm noticing, well, I was in Bogota for 6 months, and I was living in a co-living apartment building, and there are a lot of young Colombian entrepreneurs in the building. And I noticed that the trend, for example, right now in the entrepreneurial space for Latinos in Latin America, are digital launches. So in that building, there's a whole bunch of young Latinos doing digital launches in Latin America. And then I've also been receiving offers from Brazilians and Salvadorians about, oh, you're on Instagram, you have this many followers. How about doing a product launch? And like, I got my library back here. Like Jeff Walker, he was doing product launches in 2005 via email, and I've already done product launches. So basically, that's in a way Latin America is 15 years behind, because gringos were already doing product launches back in 2005, and I already did it 5 years ago. So yeah, like you said, by learning English, you get the cutting edge, and you can be ahead of any other entrepreneurial Latinos in Latin America who are going to be waiting, 5 years in order to get on to the next trend. And I think right now, I'm not too sure if you have information about that, but I've heard that in Mexico, for example, all of a sudden selling on Amazon is incredibly popular. But for gringos, we were doing that, 5, 7, 8 years ago, and the trend is kind of already passed. But in Latin America, it's just arriving.
Exactly. And it's not even Latinos. Like I lived in Quebec for a period of time, and
Yeah.
I always felt like Quebec was like 2 to 3 years behind because they're
Yeah.
speaking French.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so even for them, it takes a little bit of time for information to sort of diffuse to the rest of society, right?
Uh-huh.
And you can really see it. Like you can like read, if you pick up a newspaper in Latin America, or let's say in Quebec, like they're still saying like ¿Qué es un nomad digital?" or like whatever. And
Yeah.
we've known this stuff for like years and years, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of old news nowadays. Well, since we're talking about this entrepreneurial stuff, and like one reason I got you on is because I really try to get this message across to the people who follow me. Because a lot of Latinos that follow me, the biggest reason they want to learn English is just so they can immigrate to Canada, United States. Because I think it's the only way that they're ever gonna get the salary that they deserve, or get the money they deserve, or the life they deserve. And I think for you and I, we realize that if we're able to earn in American dollars, we can have a lifestyle which is even better in Latin America than if we were living in Canada, for example. So I'm just curious, your opinion, what would maybe be some areas that Latinos aren't really focusing on right now that they could focus on and start making money in dollars, even just in your circles of entrepreneurs? What are gringos looking for help, or looking for when they're hiring people from other countries?
Yeah, dicen que el sueño americano
Yeah.
es vivir en México con sueldo americano.
Yeah.
El sueño es sueldo. Sorry, I might have said that wrong. But
That makes sense.
yeah, yeah, it's I think like one of the big misconceptions is that you need to immigrate to the United States or Canada in order to earn the money. But what we're seeing now is that you can just do everything online. Obviously, it depends a little bit what country in Latin America you're in.
Mhm.
But I think the big thing is as long as you have access to payment processing, you're good,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
All you
Yeah,
have
so
to
as long
do
as you
is
have like access to PayPal, for
if you have
example.
PayPal, if you have Stripe,
Yeah.
if you have TransferWise, if you have even crypto,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? If you can charge an American credit card, if you
Yeah.
have an American bank account,
Yeah.
like you're good. You don't have to move to the States and go through all that hard work
Mhm.
and leave your family and all this stuff. All you need to do is have an American bank account that someone can pay you to.
Mhm. Yeah, it could be yours, it could be your friends. Just as long as you have something to receive payments, it's fine. Yeah. And
Yeah, I
now,
was just learning that like I was talking to a Venezuelan guy
okay.
for the My Latin Life podcast,
Yeah.
and he was saying that they all use Zelle, the American
I've heard,
payment
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And
I've
so
heard
Zelle is
about it.
Zelle.
Yeah.
And it's just like a Venmo, basically, like a
Mhm.
way for Americans to, you know, send a couple $100 to each other.
Yeah.
And in Venezuela, like at restaurants, at clothing stores, if you're buying a car, whatever, you can just send money to like a Zelle account in the United States from your, and they just sort of basically they do all their transactions through the US banking system,
Yeah.
even though they're in Venezuela.
Yeah, exactly. I've had quite a few potential students ask me if they could pay in Zelle. And well, I'm Canadian. I'm not too sure if you have a Zelle or a Venmo, but they always ask me about Venmo or Zelle, and I say, well, I'm Canadian. I don't
Yeah,
have
you
access to
transfer.
it. Yeah, yeah, I got. I'm not too sure, but I kind of
So
I get
so it
this.
sounds
Yeah,
like you have the same problem that the Latinos have, so everyone can
yeah,
learn together. Here's the thing is
yeah,
that you don't have to be American to have
yeah.
an American LLC, to have an
Mhm.
American company.
Oh, okay. Well,
Any
actually, that's interesting. Okay, yeah,
anyone from
uh-huh.
any country in the world
Yeah.
can open, well, except maybe North Korea, can open
Okay.
an American LLC. So you can
Oh, okay.
start a business in
Uh-huh.
the United States without ever setting foot in the United States. You can
Oh, yeah,
open a
yeah,
bank account,
yeah.
you can do transactions, you can open the illustrious Zelle account, right?
Okay.
And so when I meet Mexicans that are making like $250 a month, like
Yeah.
working 60 hours a week cleaning
Yeah.
houses or like whatever, they're working hard, man, for
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, bro, just open a US company and start
Mhm.
charging people online, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I think well, before completely focusing on teaching English, I was doing a bit of drop shipping. So Vance knows what it is. If you don't know what it is,
Yeah.
it's a type of e-commerce. And yeah, so I think when I researched it, I decided just my parents already have a licensed company or LLC in Canada, so I just decided to piggyback off of theirs. But
Mhm.
when I was doing research, I think it's pretty simple. There's a website, and I think you register, you pay, and
Yeah.
voila,
150
you have,
bucks.
yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, so how much? Well, of course, you might not know exactly. So it's about $150 just to start a LLC in the United States.
Yeah. You might have to pay an extra fee for an agent if
Mhm.
you're like not American, but it's
Yeah.
gonna be like less than $300. It's like
Mhm.
not much money.
Okay. Well, actually, that's very interesting. Well, may as well get this information out to Latinos who are interested. So yeah, you get the LLC, and then with that LLC, is it pretty simple? Just go to a bank and open up a business bank account
Yeah, so
in
what
the
happens
US?
is that when you open the LLC, you get I think it's a EIN, which is basically like
Oh
a
yeah.
bit like a business tax ID number.
Okay, yeah.
And then once you have that tax ID number, then you use that to open the bank accounts and then, file your taxes and stuff. It's really quite a smooth process.
Yeah. And do you even have to go to the United States to open up the bank account? Can you just
No,
do everything via the internet?
yeah, you can do it online.
Oh, that's pretty good. Well, this is breaking information. Well, I didn't know about this. I knew a little bit, but I didn't know all about this. Oh, you
Yeah.
guys are lucky.
And
You guys are lucky.
if this seems like a big step or whatever, the abrir una empresa americana suena complicada, no?
Yeah,
But like it's really not that bad. But even if you don't want to take that step quite yet, like I think pretty much like everyone or most LATAM countries have access to Stripe and have access to PayPal. And so you could just start with that. Open your Stripe account, open your PayPal account, and you'll be able to receive money. Because here's a thing, like here's like the big like mental blocker I noticed is that it's just that people have no way to get paid. And it's like, I don't understand. You want to get rich, but you don't even have a way to get paid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
yeah. So first step, get that get the PayPal account,
¿Quieres
the
ser
Stripe account.
rico? Quieres ser rico, pero tienes ninguna manera de recibir dinero.
Yeah, exactly.
Abre tus cuentas.
Yeah. First step. Well, no, yeah, it's very interesting information, actually. All right. Well, I wasn't expecting that, but definitely useful for sure. I guess let's go back to a bit more personal stuff. You went to Latin America. How would you describe your Spanish right now? I know you speak Spanish, but how would you describe your Spanish right now?
I don't know, man. It's hard to. It's all relative, right? But I feel very good. I feel good about it. Yeah.
Like when you go outside and you get groceries or you go to a restaurant, like I like how they say it in Spanish. Yeah, te defiendes. You.
Me defiendo.
Yeah. Te defiendes.
Me defiendo.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've had like lots of relationships with girls that didn't even speak English.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I'm pretty good in Portuguese as well.
Oh, really? Because you spent time in Brazil, right?
Yeah. My Spanish is definitely better, but yeah, so I genuinely enjoy learning languages. I think that's a really big part of it for me because I'm just very interested in self-improvement and personal development and learning skills. I think the 4-hour work week again helped impart that philosophy in me to just constantly work on myself and focus on self-development. How do you say like auto
I don't know how to say it in Spanish,
desarrollando?
actually. Auto desarrollo, something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So I'm all about learning languages. I speak 4 conversationally. And
do you speak a little bit of French, I'm guessing, or no?
Yeah, I speak French pretty good.
Okay.
And so I mean I feel pretty good in Spanish. I can definitely get better. It's still like quite gringo-ish, but I'm like people are pretty surprised.
You open your mouth and he can speak.
So
how have you been learning Spanish so far? Has it been just like you go to the country and you speak to people, or are there other things that you do or that you did to basically get to the level that you are at right now?
I would say things like this. I listen to a lot of podcasts in Spanish.
Okay.
So I listen to podcasts all the time. Like hours a day, really, for years. I've been listening to hours a day of podcasts for years, and I'm literally just flipping through it. I'll do probably like an hour a day of Spanish, maybe half-hour a day of Portuguese, half-hour a day of French, just to keep everything up to date. I have the podcast that I like, and when I'm at the gym or walking around, or even when I'm working, sometimes I'm just always listening to podcasts. So I've never paid for like a Spanish lesson in person or whatever. So it's all just from podcasts, and then obviously in-person stuff as well.
So absorbing everything like a sponge.
Yeah, I mean, you got to make an effort, right? I mean, it's a bit of a sacrifice. Like I don't like, I listen like music wise, I'm only listening to music in Spanish or
Yeah.
Portuguese. Basically, like I don't listen to any music in English for the most
Mhm.
part. I don't watch movies in English. If
Yeah.
I'm watching a movie, it's gonna be in Spanish or Portuguese
Yeah.
or French for
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm.
Because I'm just the I don't know, I'm like a robot, I guess. I always got to be productive. So I always do that. And like, you know what I mean? Like I'm seeing a girl now
Uh-huh.
who doesn't speak English.
Yeah.
She only speaks Spanish. And then but like she'll be watching novellas in Spanish. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, why are you not watching something in English? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you got to like it's not gonna come unless you like adapt your behavior.
Yeah, no, actually, yeah, I completely agree. Uh, I'm very similar to you, where like, for me, I don't really see the point of watching television if it's not gonna help me improve Spanish. Right now, I'm learning Portuguese as well. I'm also learning Russian. So yeah, for me, it's like, what's the point of watching a movie or watching a TV show if it's not gonna help me improve myself? And I think sometimes you're going out with a Latina. I'm pretty sure you went out with other Latinas. Sometimes they, in a way, they get kind of scared about how intense we can be about self-improvement. Yeah, but for me, it's just no. I don't. I like. What's the point of me going to watch a movie in English? It's like, I don't have. I haven't reached my goals, so I'm just wasting my time watching something that doesn't help me at all. So yeah, if I'm gonna be watching something or listening to something, it's gonna be in Spanish or Portuguese or Russian because that's how you improve. And a lot of my people that follow me, it can be a little bit frustrating with my students because they want to learn English so bad, and kind of like what you said, like, come on, what are you doing? And where say, oh, I don't understand what gringos are saying when they're speaking, and it's like, well, how much are you listening to?
Yeah.
Oh,
Hay que escuchar.
yeah,
Hay que
like yeah,
escuchar.
yeah, like you got to be listening, or else it's gonna be difficult
Tienes que
to.
escuchar como 1000 horas.
Yeah, yeah,
Miles de horas de
yeah,
inglés.
yeah. And actually, well, maybe I don't know about your case, but yeah, for me it was difficult in the very beginning to listen to Spanish, and yeah, I don't know. I think a few years ago, just all of a sudden, it's like the ears start opening, and you start to listen more and more and more. But of course, before that happened, I had to listen to a lot of Spanish, just so that I could start to pick up
Yeah,
what people are
it's
saying in the
natural, but
street.
it's fun too, right? Like you listen, you understand 20%.
Mhm.
It's like that for a bit. Next
Mhm.
month you understand 30%. Next month you understand 40%. And you can feel that you're making progress, which keeps you
Mhm.
going. You get into in-person interactions and you're surprised at your own progress.
Mhm.
You're speaking and saying things that you wouldn't have been able to a couple months ago. So
Yeah.
you can very clearly see the progress. I mean, it's like anything. It's like going to the gym. Like it's not going to happen overnight,
Yeah.
but if you just stay consistent every day, like you're gonna get more jacked. You're gonna
Yeah.
get better at the language, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Uh, oh, I think I could keep on talking about. Well, actually, no, something related. Uh, Now, of course, you have a lot of experience in Latin America, like myself. A question that my followers often ask me is, what is the most difficult dialect to understand? And we were talking about listening right now. And when you talked about that, I thought to myself, I should ask Vance this. So out of all the different countries you've been to in Latin America, is there a certain Spanish or Latino dialect that for you is still difficult to listen to you or stands out as just, I have no clue what they're saying when they speak?
I would say the ones that drop the S,
Yeah.
when they say like pues instead of pues.
Mhm.
So that would be like kind of like the Caribbean dialect for the most part.
Yeah, I think the
So I would say
Caribbeans.
like
Yeah.
el acento caribeño es el más
Yeah. Yeah.
difícil.
Yeah.
Saben eso, ¿no? Como like
Yeah.
in Puerto Rico,
Yeah.
Dominican Republic, maybe the Caribbean coast of Colombia.
Yeah.
That's probably the hardest one.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I
Other than,
completely
I
agree.
guess, and then famously like Chilean, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Chileans also drop their S's, and yeah, most Latinos say that the Chileans or maybe the Cubans, but they're Caribbean as well. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
just even for them, it's difficult to understand. Now, of course, you advise gringos a lot about living in Latin America and moving to
Mhm.
Latin America. Another common question I get from followers is, what is the easiest Spanish to understand or easiest Spanish to learn? So when you're talking to gringos who are thinking about learning Spanish, what are your top dialects or top cities to go to learn the language?
Yeah, I'll answer that. But I wanted to just double down on like
Oh,
the
okay, yeah, yeah,
sacrifice of
yeah,
self-development and stuff, because I
yeah,
think it's so so important.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
Mhm.
you have to understand that it's gonna be a little bit of a sacrifice
Yeah.
to learn English. You're gonna have to stop watching 100 hours, 100 episodes of your novella.
Mhm.
You're gonna like you have to cut out the novella. You have to watch some you have to watch something in English.
Yeah, yeah,
um you like you should probably stop listening to Luis Miguel all day and maybe listen to the English speaking equivalent. I
yeah.
don't know, go listen to, I don't
Actually,
even
yeah, who
know.
do we have an equvalent of Luis Miguel? For me, is
uh,
how who would it
I don't
be?
know,
George Michael? I think George
Elton
Michael's kind of
John,
Elton John. Okay, yeah,
Johnny Cash. Oh, there's lots of guys. I mean,
yeah,
go listen to we have so much history of
yeah,
music
yeah.
that you don't know. And like it's very obvious, right? Like if I go to Latin America, like she's not going to know who the Doors are. She doesn't know who
Mhm,
Jim Morrison is.
mhm.
She doesn't know who, the maybe she knows who the Beatles are, but
Yeah,
that's about it.
mhm,
She's not really going to know who Aerosmith is and things like
mhm.
that. Um, and so like we have a very like a rich culture of music, obviously,
Mhm,
it's some of the most popular music and movies, and like we're a
mhm.
cultural
Yeah,
juggernaut, right? The
yeah,
English speaking world. So
mhm,
there's so much to discover.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, you have to understand that it's going to be a sacrifice. But
mhm,
I think like the English and then the work stuff, it's two parts of the same pie, basically.
mhm,
Is like you're going to need to, like, if you really want to achieve like freedom in your life,
mhm,
you're going to have to speak English, and you're going to have to make money online, right?
mhm,
And those are probably like the two biggest aspects of the freedom puzzle.
mhm,
And it's going to take some sacrifice to get there, but it's obviously worth it, because what's the alternative?
mhm,
What's the alternative? Salario mínimo en tu país? Come on. Like,
mhm.
so like you can do, and I don't know, I think hopefully what people like Profe Kyle can help inspire people.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Again, it's kind of frustrating for me because, just like you said, there even lots of, yeah. I understand lots of Latinos don't like gringo culture either because they think gringos are creído, engreído, or some Latinos don't like gringos. For example, Canadians. I've been to Colombia, and sometimes Colombians don't like Canadians because the Canadian mining companies, they go to Colombia. And like, so, I can understand you might have some hang-ups about gringos. At the same time, the gringo culture is huge. Yeah, it surprises me.
Well, there's so many subcultures, like
Yeah,
whatever
exactly.
you're
Yeah,
into,
yeah,
whatever you're,
exactly. Yeah,
I don't know if you're into tattoos or
yeah,
surfing
yeah.
or the circus or
Mhm,
ballet or
mhm,
like any skateboarding, any type of subculture.
yeah.
That's like one of the coolest parts about the United States, and I guess the English speaking world, is these subcultures really flourish
Mhm,
because people are so independent,
mhm,
right? Where if you go to Argentina and a lot of parts of Latin America, a lot of people like think the same, dress the same, act the
mhm,
same, behave the
yeah,
same. And I like that in a
mhm,
lot of ways. I enjoy like traditional values.
mhm,
Um, but I guess one of the benefits, it's pros and cons, right? But one of the
yeah,
benefits of how independent Americans are is
mhm,
our community of
mhm,
subcultures is
yeah,
huge. So whatever
yeah,
thing that you're into, you're going to be able to find a group of like-minded people. And that's the best way to learn, is to learn something that you're excited about, because that way it doesn't feel like work,
mhm,
right? If you're doing something that doesn't feel like work, you're going to be more mentally stimulated, you're going to be more engaged,
yeah.
and the time is going to pass by, and you're not counting the hours, right? So
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And for me, just my experience with Latinos who speak really good English, they're usually the ones that do exactly like you're saying, is that they get really hooked on some aspect of gringo subculture. So I met one girl from Cali, and she speaks good English. I always speak to her in Spanish, but she speaks good English. And I didn't know why she spoke good English, but then she told me when she was a teenager, she got really hooked on 30 Seconds to Mars. And she was part of like the
it's a
30
TV
Seconds to
show, right?
Mars. No, it's the band. Yeah, I don't really.
Oh, it's a band.
It's the
Okay.
band with Jared Leto.
Okay. Oh yeah,
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 gotcha,
yeah.
gotcha. Yeah, I know
And
that
it's
guy.
just really popular worldwide. So she became a part of the fan club, and she was participating in. Of course, most of the fans are going to be gringos, and of course, international fans are going to have to interact with all the other fans in English. So yeah, most of her English came from just finding an aspect of gringo culture that she really enjoyed and just participating in it every single day during her teenage years. I remember another girl I met in Guadalajara. She learned English from what she told me. Just she was a big fan of Beyonce, so she just listened to Beyonce for years, watched all the interviews, and incredible accent that she had. So I completely agree with you. The gringo culture is huge, even if you may not agree with, I don't know, gringo government policies or the gringo corporations. There's going to be aspects of the gringo culture that you're going to resonate with because, yeah, there's so many different subcultures. So yeah, go ahead, explore, and become acquainted with what interests you.
Yeah,
Uh,
agree.
and you said something, well, actually, for me, it's interesting. You said, something like us Americans, and I'm Canadian, and but at the same time do the same thing as you. Where for me, the Canadian and American culture really isn't that different, but lots of Latinos they get angry about this, or they get angry sometimes when I use the term gringo. Like for me, I use gringo because it just explains, like Latinos got Latino. For me, Americans and Canadians, we need our own term. So I just use gringo because we're very similar. So I'm
Mhm.
interested to get to your viewpoint as a Canadian. How different, how similar are the cultures uh, from your perspective? Because for me, they're very similar. There's very few differences. But you're another Canadian. What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, and I've lived in the States and have family ties in the States. So to me it's not like an outside looking in type thing.
Yeah.
I definitely without saying too much, but um what would I say? Yeah, it's basically one continuous culture between
Mm-hmm.
Canada and the US. Canada definitely has a couple quirky things that make Canada unique,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be a couple different foods or maple syrup or hockey or
Yeah, exactly.
there's certainly a little bit of Canadian culture.
Yeah.
But Canada and the US, you could sort of think of it as one combined culture.
Mm-hmm. I think there are some Canadians who get offended if we get grouped together, but I think you're similar to me where I don't get offended if people think I'm American or they group us together because yeah, there's really not that much of a difference between us besides a few things, like you said, like hockey. Um, all right. Now, what else do I want to talk to you about? Oh, you talked a little bit about Latin women, and of course, I do a lot of videos giving advice to Latino women who date gringos.
Uh-huh.
And it sounds like you're a little bit similar to myself, a hardworking guy, very focused on your goals, self-development. And it can be very frustrating for Latinas. So I'm just wondering, from your own perspective, uh, experiences dating Latinas, maybe what would be some advice that you give a Latina who wants to go out with a gringo who is dating a gringo right now and just doesn't really understand how our mind functions? Like, would you say, be patient? Would you say give him more space? What, like, kind of the woman that you've dated, like, what have you always wanted to tell them? Because they're just frustrated with how different you are compared to Latino men.
Yeah, it's definitely a good question, and I watched some of the videos on your channel just to get a vibe for your online presence,
Yeah.
and it's like you're almost like a therapist, man, in some of the videos. Like it's
Yeah.
hilarious. You're like reading the texts and
Yeah.
um basically sort of like communicating the gringo mindset a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, I'm almost more curious to hear from you. I think
Yeah.
part of what I would say is there's probably going to be a difference between a very new arrival to Latin America
Okay.
versus someone that has spent a couple of years in Latin
Yeah.
America and has sort of gotten used to things.
Hmm.
So if you're dating a recent arrival
Hmm.
to Latin America, who got there like less than a year ago,
Hmm.
yeah, there that's gonna take a particular level of patience. But I think after a couple of years in Latin America, most of the gringos sort of figure out that things work a little bit differently, and things work on different timelines and so forth. So I think you gotta put things in context. I could go into more detail, I suppose, but
Well,
I'll leave it there.
yeah. I think it's a good point what you said, because yeah, obviously a lot of the questions that I get are from Latinas, and it sounds like the gringos that they meet are, like you said, gringos who have come to Latin America for the first time, or gringos who've never went out with a Latina before. And I completely agree with you, where those guys don't really understand Latino culture. So the what do you say, the culture shock, or the
Conflict.
friction, yeah, the conflict between cultures are going to be a lot greater compared to yourself or myself, where we've been in Latin America a lot longer. We understand how things work. So it's a little bit smoother. We can kind of talk to the girl and explain to her, okay, this is just how I view things, this is how I am. Whereas with a new arrival, I just can imagine just like, why are you acting like this? I don't understand why you're asking this question. I don't get it. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. So yeah, there's a difference between new arrivals and gringos that have been in Latin America for a long time. And this is just, Latinas love to hear this. So I got to ask you, for you as a gringo, what attracts you to a Latina woman? What is something that makes you want to go out with Latinas?
Oh, geez. I think if you ask me this question on a different day, I might have a different opinion. So I
Yeah.
won't have the perfect answer, because if
Yeah.
you asked me six months ago, if you asked me 6 months in the future, I'll probably have a different answer.
Yeah.
It's like, what do I find attractive about Latino women? I think one of the big things is just the temperament
Yeah.
and the behavior. It's hard to explain what I mean by temperament, but I just mean that it's much less abrasive and friction creating in Latin America.
Okay.
Whereas in North America, like, women will argue with men and like raise their voices, or just like disagree for like no reason really.
Yeah.
And they try to use a lot more and so that's a big thing. Is one thing I like about Latin America is that women aren't just like arguing with me and disagreeing with me. They're just sort of like, I don't know, just more like chill about everything and have a better temperament.
Actually, it's funny, because the stereotype about Latino women is that they're kind of crazy, and kind of like the telenovelas where they're throwing clothes out the window and
Yeah, it's
yelling
the
at you.
exact opposite of my
Yeah,
experience.
I did. Honestly, I've never met a Latina like that. I have seen videos. I do think they exist, but I've never had like a super jealous
And
Latina
maybe it
yelling
comes
at me.
out, if
Yeah,
you cheat on them or
yeah,
something, and then you get the
yeah,
spicy Latina or whatever.
yeah,
But
yeah,
like on a day-to-day basis, it's just a much more happy,
yeah.
tranquil interaction and relationship.
Mhm.
Whereas yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot I could say. There's a lot I shouldn't say, but I think
Yeah,
it's in the United States, women are going through an interesting time, right?
I like how you worded it. Yeah, yeah.
Where they're able to provide for themselves and earn
Mhm.
money,
Mhm.
and so the role of women in society is changing, and
Mhm.
therefore the role of men in society is changing.
Yeah,
And this is happening faster in North
yeah,
America than in other parts of the world.
yeah,
And because of that, there's sort of like what you might call growing pains,
yeah, for
where
sure.
we're sort of like figuring out where the equilibrium is.
Hmm.
Um, so that's a thing. But I I think everyone that I speak to generally agrees that the interactions are just a lot more pleasant
Hmm.
in Latin America, and people have a lot more manners, and
Hmm.
they're nicer.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. Just Latinas are happy. It's like they want to see you. They don't want to fight. They want, every time that they're with you, they want to. I don't like to use the word, because sometimes women will be like, oh, well, but they want to please you.
Yeah.
whatever sense of the word you want
Yeah.
to, whatever sense of the meaning you want to use for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Latinas, it's like they want to make you happy. And yeah, just you don't really get that from gringos. They're not really trying to make you happy. It's more like in a way, it's as a man, you kind of feel like a dog. Like, this is my pet. Like, here's my pet Kyle. I take him with me to go on dates. And yeah. Whereas Latinas, they see you and like, oh, hey, sweetie, how are you? How is, do you want to do something? Oh, that's fantastic. They're just always happy. They're always smiling. So yeah, it's nice. I know what you're trying to say. All right. And of course, you have a lot of time in Latin America. I'm just curious, were there any big culture shocks? I like to talk about cultures a lot.
Sure.
Because of course, understanding the differences between cultures can help you assimilate better, whether you're coming to the United States, Canada, or for a gringo going to Latin America. Maybe from your own perspective, what were some culture shocks that you had to deal with when going to Latin America, and even now living in Latin America?
Geez, there's so many. There's so many, from like how to get water
No,
and
yeah.
to, you know what I mean? Like
Oh,
that
okay. Yeah, it depends on
you
the
can't
country, right?
that like you can't brush your teeth with tap water and
Yeah.
things like that. To um there's so many, it's almost hard to think.
Mhm. I
Um
I remember that happened to me in Mexico, where I was in Guadalajara in 2015, and yeah, so I knew right away that I couldn't drink the tap water. But I remember I bought some vegetables, and I had a girl came over for a date, and I think I was gonna make a
right.
salad or cut up some vegetables. So for me, as a Canadian, I was just gonna, even though I knew the tap water wasn't safe to drink, I thought, oh, I'm gonna wash the vegetables with the water, and they're gonna be cut them up, and we're gonna eat them. And I remember the girl just looking at me saying, you didn't bring I don't know, maybe you know what it's called, but you didn't bring like the vegetable disinfectant? I said, what are you talking about? And she said, "Wait, like, oh, like with the vegetables here, yeah, wash them, but you have to wash them with a special disinfectant." And I said, what? She said, yeah, it's like in the grocery store, it's called this. So we didn't have vegetables that night because of that. And I went to the grocery store and I bought myself whatever this disinfectant was, because yeah, I guess in Latin America, well, in some parts of Latin America, you're supposed to disinfect your vegetables, which yeah, you don't never have to do in Canada, at least. So yeah, I understand that one for sure. But yeah, some Latin American countries, you also have to get water. I think when I was in Argentina, yeah, you can drink straight from the tap. Some parts of Colombia you can, some parts you
Mhm,
can't. But
mhm.
yeah, whenever you're traveling in Latin America, you always have to ask natives or locals from the area, like, can I drink the tap water or can I not drink the tap water?
Yeah, there's so many layers to it, because there's layers of culture shock from just being in a different climate.
Hmm.
There's culture shock from being in a place that speaks a different language.
Yeah.
There's cultural shock from, let's say, like a different legal system. So there's like all these different layers of culture shock, right? So,
Hmm.
for example, when we go down to a tropical climate, we didn't know there's all these tropical diseases. Like, I had no idea what dengue
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
I had
Yeah,
no,
dengue and Zika seems like the most horrible thing. I've heard about the
yeah.
symptoms. I say, I hope I never get that. It seems
Like,
horrible.
I didn't know it. I like, you know what I mean? Like, we have mosquitoes in Canada, but
Yeah, they're not gonna kill you.
you're not
Yeah,
afraid that you're gonna like get some
yeah,
insane like malaria or whatever.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so like that, there's, that's part of it. Um, uh, like, and then so there's so many layers to it, right? So I think
Yeah,
it sort of depends a bit on where you're from. I think
yeah,
probably Canadians have a bit more culture shock than,
yeah,
say,
for sure.
someone from like the southern United States would.
Hmm.
um
Yeah. Well, like
Obviously.
I'm not too sure about well, actually, maybe I should ask you this. You're from Ontario. When I went to Colombia for the first time, big thing in Latin America is almost all Latino countries use plastic bags for milk. I think in Ontario, you guys also use plastic bags for milk, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they use
Yeah.
plastic bags.
But where I'm from in Alberta, we use the
The
cartons.
cartons, yeah.
So yeah, for me going down to Latin America and they were using these plastic bags, and well, why is milk in a bag? That just seems so strange to me.
Or juice in a bag, or how they they'll pour a Pepsi into a bag and give you a bag with a straw.
Oh, actually, well, which country did? I think I've seen that, but I've never really lived in a place where they do it often. Which country
Oh,
does that? Do you
dude,
know?
Like a lot of them, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I,
guess it's depends where you go, but yeah, they'll just
yeah.
they'll take like, or they'll have like a 2 liter Fanta, and then you just
Yeah.
ask for like a little bit of Fanta, and they'll just pour the Fanta in a plastic bag. They'll
Okay.
put they'll put an elastic band around it and
Yeah.
put a straw in there, and
Uh,
then you just walk away with, even with like smoothies and stuff. Yeah, you just get like a
yeah.
plastic bag of Fanta.
Yeah. I've seen it a few times. I remember when I lived in Cartagena. Yeah, they
Or
had like
coconut
the
milk or coconut
yeah, yeah,
water.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, in Cartagena they would have the bags of water, and you get on the bus and they like squeeze it into the mouth. And it was the
Yeah.
first time that I ever saw it. Interesting, interesting.
It's
Yeah, so
funny.
a lot of plastic bag drinking culture in Latin America. Well, and again, another thing as a Canadian, I think Americans are a little bit better at getting used to this. But where I'm from, Alberta, for example, there are no rats and there are no cockroaches. So I didn't really see a rat for the first time until I went to Bogota, and I didn't see a cockroach for the first time until I went to Mexico. And yeah, in a way, it was kind of like seeing a mythical creature because I only saw cockroaches or rats in movies, but I never saw them in real life. And then you see them
Right.
for the first time, and holy cow, these are real. And then you also understand why Latinos clean so much too, because yeah, if you don't clean your apartment diligently, cockroaches start coming in, and like, oh, it's gross. And yeah, in Canada, you can kind of leave your dishes in the sink for a day or two. And obviously, it's kind of gross, but yeah, you don't really have to worry about ants or cockroaches coming
Or
in because it's
mold.
yeah, or mold. Yeah, it's too cold, so nothing's gonna happen. So yeah, that was
Yeah, there's all these considerations, like, all the gringos, like they want to maybe buy an apartment in Panama,
yeah,
and then they realize that if they leave it like unoccupied for a month or two,
yeah,
like all the clothes in there get like moldy and like whatever, and you have to like run a dehumidifier, and there's all these like tropical considerations that we don't think about.
yeah, exactly.
Where
All
do
right.
you live most of the time in Latin America?
Yeah, so most of the time I live. I think you deal with a lot of guys like this, and maybe you're going through the same thing. Maybe we can talk about that quickly right now. Uh, yeah, when I was younger, I was traveling to a whole bunch of different places, but I think slowly, once you start traveling around, you start to find what you like, what you don't like, which places you can spend more time in. So I would say till now, I probably have split time more or less equally between Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina. I think more time in Colombia. And yeah, for me, it just, followers will ask me what's my favorite country or favorite place to be. And it's kind of get old, depends. Like Mexico, the street food is incredible. Just, it's for me, it's so awesome that you can just go to any street corner and there's a guy selling tacos or a guy selling juice or water or desserts. It's for me, it's just heaven. And many Mexicans don't realize how awesome it is. And yeah, you can't do that in other parts of Latin America or other parts of the world. It's very Mexican. And in Colombia, of course, just the music. Like I love dancing and I love music. So when it comes to music and dancing, there's not really a better country in the world than Colombia. And
There's
of
a
course,
culture shock for you.
yeah. Oh, what the dancing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about you. Yeah. So I love learning to dance, but I always tell Latinas like the most beautiful thing in the world is dancing with Latina because Latinas get these huge smiles, especially Colombians, but I would say all Latinas. If you like, if I were talking to the guys that follow you who are new to Latin America, sometimes they might think like, why do you put so much emphasis on the music and on the dancing? It's look, you don't understand. If you dance with a Latina and you recognize the words in the song, you will never see a smile as big as that. It's just, I've never seen a woman as happy as a Latina who is dancing and listening to songs that her great grandparents were listening to in the 40s. It's, it's awesome. And I think a lot of gringos just don't understand this. So yeah, probably a culture shock for
Yeah, I think
many
a culture
people.
shock was the first time I saw someone crying while listening to music.
Yeah. Well,
It was
have you
so
been?
emotional, right?
Yeah. Have you been to a Latin American concert?
Um, only smaller ones.
Okay. I went to my first reggaeton concert in Cali
Uh-huh.
in October. I saw Wisin and Yandel.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm a Canadian. It's my first Latin American concert. So, I'm kind of Canadian American gringo perspective. I'm thinking I'm gonna go there. People are gonna sit down. We're gonna listen to the music. Drink a beer. Yeah. From the moment we got there to the moment we left, all the people were standing up, or there was already music playing. It felt like you were in a nightclub. So everybody was already dancing, everybody was already singing. And then when the concert started, even crazier. And I'm thinking, Wisin and Yandel, reggaeton artists, I think I knew like one or two songs. I knew Es la noche de sexo, which is this kind of funny song that you listen to when you first start learning Spanish, and you kind of think, really, there's a song like this in Latin America? So that's the only song I knew. And I was thinking, oh, probably the only song that they're gonna sing to is gonna be that song. But no, from the first song to the last song, everybody was singing. And I feel like I'm sticking out like a sore thumb because I'm standing up and, I know how to dance reggaeton. It's not that hard, but still just everybody around me is. I was like, how do you guys memorize all these songs? So, of course, gringos, we like music, but like Colombians especially, they take liking music to a whole nother level where it's just incredible how many songs they've memorized in their mind, and they can sing all of them. Yeah, for me, it's a big culture shock.
It's like an interactive experience.
Yeah. So if you're, I don't know, I think most of the Latinos are going to be listening to this, but if you're a gringo listening to this, go to a Latino concert, a big one, and you'll be shocked. It's basically like a giant nightclub and just everybody dancing. You could probably meet Latinas that way too. I wouldn't be surprised. There was tons of Latinos just having fun. It felt like a nightclub instead of a concert, my perspective. Yeah.
Right. It's more of it's not like the band like doing it at you. It's almost like everyone's interacting.
It's like everybody's involved. And I guess quickly for Latinos listening to this, for me or Vance in Canada, if we go to concert, I've been to a few concerts in Canada where I went to see the Killers. And there's a few songs that we know, like Mr. Brightside, and I can't remember all their songs. See, this is how bad we learn music. It's difficult to even remember a song. So there might be two songs that we sing to, but the rest of it we're kind of sitting down, just swaying back and forth, nothing too crazy. So for Latinos it's very boring, but it's more or less how gringos enjoy concerts. Is just
right. It's almost like we're going to the opera.
Yeah, exactly. And for Latinos it's a full body experience. Everybody is into it, dancing and singing. It's impressive. Yeah. It's very impressive. Yeah.
You got me laughing, bro.
All right. I guess we can kind of wrap things up. I want to give you some quick hitters.
Sure.
Hopefully we don't make anybody angry. So I want to know, you've been to many countries in Latin America. Maybe let's start with that. If you had to choose one country in Latin America to live in or stay in for a long period of time, which country would you choose?
For convenience, it would be Mexico. On a pure passion basis, it would be Brazil.
Yeah. Actually, I want to go to Brazil for the first time. I don't think any Brazilians are going to be watching this. Who knows? Maybe in the future, because I am learning Portuguese. So I want to teach all Latinos, and that includes Brazilians. So I guess if there's a future Brazilian watching this, Vance, what is maybe your favorite city in Brazil or your favorite part of Brazil?
There's so much more I want to discover, but I think any beach town in Brazil, they know how to do it right.
Yeah.
It's Brazilian culture is very interesting to me.
Yeah, I've heard Brazilian. Yeah, Brazilians are definitely Latinos, but it's kind of, well, I think it'll be interesting for Latinos who speak Spanish watching this. How would you describe the Brazilian culture and compare it to the other Latino cultures? Is it like a super Latino culture? Is it like Latino but a little bit different? How would you describe it?
That's a good question. It's probably, Brazil has a lot of different cultures, right? Because it's so huge. It's 220 million people. The interior of Brazil is very like country and ranchero and stuff. Mm-hmm. And the coast is very, I guess, Caribeño and very just very chill. And it's all about lifestyle, and working is not too important, and looking good is important, and having muscles and being fit and stuff. But I think it's just got a lot of that good old Latin friendliness and a love and a joy for life.
I think you spent a little bit of time in Colombia. I asked a Colombian who was living in Brazil. I think he might be there right now. Uh, like, the security situation, would you say Brazil feels the most dangerous, or would you say it's not as dangerous as they often make it out to seem? How would you describe the security situation in Brazil right now?
I mean, if you're comparing it to Colombia, the thing is, like in Colombia, it's sort of difficult to escape the danger because there's no like perfectly safe places in Colombia except
Yeah.
maybe like the Eje Cafetero.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but like in southern Brazil, it's basically European. Like it's
Mhm.
very safe in southern Brazil. And then as you work your way north, it
Mhm.
gets significantly less safe.
Mhm.
So you can sort of like pick your poison or
Mhm.
pick your level of danger,
Mhm.
danger to fun ratio, I guess you could say. So
Mhm.
southern Brazil can be very safe.
Mhm.
And also, there's no scopolamine, so you're not going to get drugged like
Yeah.
in Colombia or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think what I'm noticing a lot on Twitter and with a lot of the LATAM people that I'm talking to is that Brazil is the new Colombia.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely want to go, and that's the same thing I heard. Like Southern Brazil, like you said, more European, safer. Northern Brazil, more, I guess, Caribbean, and less safe the situation. Uh, yeah. So actually, the beaches. So for you, are the best beaches in Brazil, in your opinion? Because I've heard
Yeah,
lots
they're
about the beaches, like lots of gringos, like the best beaches, just Brazil, hands down.
Yeah, quite possibly. I think there's a lot of good beaches in Panama. I think there's some good beaches in Mexico,
Mhm.
but Brazil just has an enormous coastline, man.
Yeah.
It's just I mean,
If
it's
you say
like that.
if you go along the coast, you're gonna find
It's
beaches. You're
like I
gonna
mean, it's
yeah.
thousands of kilometers and it's good beaches the whole
Mhm.
way
Mhm.
from Uruguay all the way up to Guyana. So
Mhm.
it's yeah, there's it's probably in Brazil, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Like it. All right, good.
Although there's some
So
actually there's some really nice ones in those like small what's it called? The small island like off of Puerto Rico. There's some nice
oh,
islands
really?
obviously in the
Okay.
Bahamas.
Mhm.
I think Cuba also has some extremely nice beaches
Mhm.
that people just don't know about because it's
Mhm.
not as touristed.
Yeah.
So yeah, certainly the Caribbean would
Mhm.
be the conventional choice, but I think Brazil
Mhm.
will give it its run for the money.
Yeah, I think you're talking to a lot of guys that are in Venezuela or interested in Venezuela, and yeah, I've heard from
Mm,
Venezuelans that there's good
right,
beaches in
right. Isla
Venezuela.
Margarita
Yeah,
and
Los
a lot of
Roques. I
places.
actually, when I was in
Los Roques.
Vancouver, I went to a Brazilian jiu-jitsu school, and so there were Brazilians there, and
Mhm.
I think I was learning about Latin America, and yeah, I told them I'm going to go to Latin America for the first time. And they said, "Oh, if you're going to go somewhere, go to Los Roques in Venezuela, the best beach they've ever been to." So those were Brazilians saying like the best beach that they had ever been to wasn't in Brazil; it was Los Roques in Venezuela. I think it's hard to get to, but if you do go there, yeah, it's like island
Yeah,
paradise.
I recently heard that as well.
Hmm. So yeah, for convenience, Mexico. For just passion, Brazil. What about a city? Is there, well, if you had to choose a city or a few cities, what cities would you want to spend time in long term in Latin America?
I think in Mexico, I think Mazatlan is a great
Yeah.
option for most people.
Hmm.
Um, and I think I have my eye on I have my eye on a couple secret cities as well, but I think
Yeah.
Mazatlan is great for most people
Hmm.
in North America.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, I mean, I would say if you want more information on hidden gems in Latin America
Yeah.
or where the gringos are thinking about going,
Yeah.
uh, then stay tuned to
Yeah.
My Latin Life on
Well,
all
actually,
platforms on Twitter
yeah.
because we're constantly
Yeah.
dropping hidden gems. We're dropping our favorite cities and places all the time.
Well, actually, maybe we can do that quick. So if there is a Latino watching this and they maybe want to give you some advice, maybe they want to give you a hidden gem. What are some of the big things that you and other gringos are looking for in, I don't know, hidden gems or cities that might not be as popular with the average gringo?
Sure, I think we're looking for walkability. We're
Yeah,
looking
for
for
sure. I agree.
walkable
Yeah.
cities because
Yeah.
we're coming from a very car-centric region, North
Mhm.
America, and we're probably not going to have cars being in
Yeah,
Latin
exactly.
America.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're looking for walkability. We're looking for some level of convenience and familiarity. So
Mhm.
that means there's probably ride-sharing apps. There might be food delivery apps like Rappi.
Mhm.
Um, I would say a lot of credit card accessibility so
Okay.
that it's not too much of a cash-based society that we're able
Mhm.
to use credit cards because cash is just pretty annoying.
Mhm.
And it's a lot, and we have to pay to take out money from the ATM and all that.
Yeah.
So we're looking for places where there's a lot of credit card terminals and you can just pay with credit card for most stuff.
Yeah.
We're looking for um, places with community. We're looking for
Yeah.
places with an expat community, a digital nomad community, where we can meet other entrepreneurs and like-minded individuals,
Mhm.
where people from all over the world can sort of get together, share ideas in a very inclusive way where there's no barriers and everyone's sort of like learning and feeling like non-judgmental.
Mhm.
I think some people go for different things. Some people will avoid community and touristy locations
Yeah.
and go for just like authentic cities where they're the only gringo.
Yeah.
And then some people find comfort in places that have um, yoga lessons and
Mhm.
other sort of comforts. Um,
Typical gringo stuff. Yeah.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
some people like mountains, some people like the beach.
Mhm.
I would say probably most people want to be on the beach though, I would
Yeah.
assume.
I'm a bit. I prefer the mountains. I'm not much of a beach
You're a
person.
mountain guy.
You can
Cool.
see how white I am, and I don't do very well on the beach. I disappoint a lot of Latinas because I don't really want to go to the beach that much.
Yeah,
Take me to a mountain.
I think good food. I think
Yeah, for sure.
low cost of living is
Yeah.
important. I think some level of English being spoken is
Mhm.
important,
Yeah.
especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
I think a somewhat functioning society
Yeah.
in safety
Mhm.
is important.
Yeah.
Um, and I think at least for the single guys that that there's a plethora of restaurants and bars
Mhm.
and dating options and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, I think what we've kind of found over all the years we've been doing this is there's really not too many like perfect cities for everyone.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's that's part of the fun, I guess, is that
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
always somewhere new
Mhm.
to discover.
Yeah.
Um, but I think yeah, those are a lot of things we're looking for.
All right. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, if you're from Latin America and you think there's a spot that Vance or the gringo should check out, well, leave your city or leave the city down below in the comments.
Yeah,
All
comment
right.
below and we'll visit.
Yeah. Quickly, favorite food in Latin America. Latinos like to argue about this all the time. Do you have a favorite?
I don't know why, but yerba mate came to mind.
Well,
Obviously
actually, I was going to ask you about
not a
drink
food,
next.
not
That's
a
not food.
food.
So if you
Yeah,
want,
not a
okay, so
not
favorite
a,
drink, you like yerba mate.
yeah, I really like yerba mate because
Yeah.
I don't know, I get too much coffee.
Yeah.
It's nice to take breaks
Yeah.
from coffee and drink yerba mate. I feel very happy when I drink yerba mate.
Yeah.
And I
Actually,
love
yeah.
mixing in like all different types of herbs in there,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
chamomile or
Mint.
mints
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So I enjoy that.
Yeah.
Food. I like all the soups. So I like
Yeah.
in I like caldos, I like sopas.
Mhm.
So in Mexico, I like pozole.
Yeah. Yeah.
In Colombia and Panama, I like sancocho.
Uh-huh.
Um, Brazil has a bunch of them too. So I don't know. I feel like it warms the heart. Like
I agree. I
it's
think it's a
good for
Canadian thing. Canadians,
it's good for the
we
corazon. I
yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah.
good caldo.
Yeah,
Caldo de
we like
pollo,
soups
something
for
like
sure.
that, or just a steak, a nice steak from Paraguay or Argentina also came to mind too,
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I see. Yeah. I
with a Malbec.
completely agree with you. All right. Well, I think that's all I had for you, Vance. So yeah, thanks for doing this with us. I don't know, is there any last comments, any final thoughts that you want to give us before we end this?
Well, yeah, just Profe Kyle. Just wanted to thank you for having me on. I thought this was fun. Definitely a different type of conversation that I'm used to, and
Yeah,
it's fun being interviewed for once because I do a lot of the
yeah,
interviewing on my podcast, the
yeah,
My
yeah. If there's
Latin
somebody
Life
watching this who
podcast.
want to get more English, yeah, Vance does podcast for gringos who are interested in Latin America, and of course they're all in English. So check out his podcast. How many podcasts have you done so far? I think I saw maybe it was like 40, 50. How many?
Yeah, I think there's about 45 published.
Hmm.
And we're really upping the schedule. So it's like 2 a week now. And it's gonna be fun.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
we'll definitely have you on, Kyle. We'll have you on for an episode for sure.
I wouldn't be
Um,
your normal guest because I know I listen to some podcasts. Your guests are very smart guys, talk a lot about business. I wish I could be a more successful businessman, but probably just be talking, shooting the shits, as we say in Gringolandia, which I do enjoy doing. Yes.
yeah, we can make it happen.
Uh,
So yeah, you can catch us on Twitter. That's where we're probably the most active at My Latin Life.
mhm.
We of course have an Instagram and a Facebook page as well, My Latin Life. And then the podcast. So it's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube,
Mhm.
the My Latin Life podcast, or just type in My Latin Life and you'll find it. And you'll be able to hear all about how gringos like me and Kyle are gentrifying your country and making it more expensive for you and pushing you out of your neighborhoods.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, people started to complain about that. We got to start keeping a low profile. Start wearing a hoodie all the time. And then, yeah, of course, you also have the blog, which is where I originally found
yes,
my Latin life. And so I would just say anybody who's from Latin America watching this, yeah, if you want to help Vance out, because obviously we're gringos, maybe we don't know all the secrets. So I would just say, do you have comments on your blog, or is there no comments?
there's a contact page.
Okay, yeah. So I guess if I think there's still a city guide. So if you're from
Mhm.
a big city in Latin America, there's a good chance that Vance has a city guide. And so you can read the city guide about your city. And if you think there's something Vance should know, then look, yeah, maybe send him a message giving him some advice. Or yeah, I guess I'm guessing on Twitter, maybe just comment on send him a message. Yeah, many different
Absolutely.
places. Yeah. All right,
Absolutely.
Vance. Well, yeah, thank you very much for coming on, speaking in English with me, giving the people some genuine gringo English. And hopefully we'll talk more in the future. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you for being a longtime reader, My Latin Life, and thank you for the invite and great to connect, man.
All right. So have a great day, Vance. And everybody, we'll see you soon. Bye.
Cheers.